Has anyone ever honored one of those if we're still single at 40? Let's get married commitments? Back in high school, my best friend Sarah and I made this exact promise. We were 17, eating pizza on her bedroom floor after both getting dumped. Before prom, I still remember her exact words. This is stupid. Let's make a deal. If we're both single at 40, we'll marry each other. We even wrote it on a napkin and signed it with greasy pizza-stained fingers. We laughed about it for years. After high school, life took us in different directions. I went to medical school while she pursued her dream of becoming a chef. We stayed in touch through social media, liking each other's posts and sending birthday messages. At 35, I was married to my career, performing surgeries while my dating life flatlined. Sarah owned a successful restaurant in Chicago, but her relationships never lasted more than a few months. We'd joke about our pact whenever we caught up. Then, 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, I got a FedEx package. Inside was that old pizza-stained napkin from 23 years ago, laminated and worn. Attached was a note. Remember this? I'm still single. If you are, meet me at our old high school bleachers on your birthday. I thought she was joking. Sarah had always been the wild one, but this was extreme even for her. Still, on my birthday, I drove to our old high school. It was 7 p.m., just like when we used to sneak out to smoke behind the gym. There she was, sitting on the same bleachers where we'd made our pact. She hadn't changed much. Same mischievous smile, same curly red hair. She was holding 2 greasy pizza boxes from the same place we ordered from that night. I'm not actually proposing, she said, handing me a slice. But I did move back to town. My restaurant chain is expanding, and I bought that old diner on Oak Street. I'm also still single and I heard you are too. We sat there eating pizza, catching up like no time had passed. She told me about her failed engagement last year. I told her about my workaholic tendencies destroying my last relationship. It felt just like high school again. 2 months later, we went on our first real date. 6 months after that, I was helping her renovate the diner. By our 41st birthdays, we were living together. Not because of some teenage pact, but because sometimes life brings you back to exactly where you need to be. Last week, we finally got married. During her vows, Sarah pulled out that old laminated napkin. I know we're a year late, she said, but some promises are worth keeping. Back in high school, my best friend Sarah and I made a pact. You know, the kind half serious, half sarcastic, made under the influence of heartbreak and teenage melodrama. We were both 17, freshly dumped right before prom, sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by empty soda cans and the smell of cheap pepperoni pizza. She turned to me and said, "This is stupid. Dating is stupid. Prom is stupid." I laughed. All of it's stupid. Then she grinned, mischievous, impulsive, wild Sarah, and said, "Let's make a deal. If we're both single at 40, we'll marry each other. No pressure. Just backup plan. Deal," I said, still laughing. We sealed it with a pinky swear and signed a pizza grease-stained napkin like it was a sacred legal document. That napkin lived in her dresser drawer for the rest of high school. It was our little inside joke. Our plan Z after graduation. Life pulled us in opposite directions. I went off to medical school, immersed myself in anatomy textbooks and sleepless rotations. Sarah chased her culinary dream, bouncing from one restaurant kitchen to another, eventually opening her own place in Chicago. We kept in touch barely. Birthday texts, occasional Instagram likes, the kind of long-distance friendship where months could pass but somehow, it always felt like no time had gone by. At 35, I was married to my career. I was spending more nights in scrubs than in bed. My relationships never lasted more than a few dates. At some point, I started to believe that love was one of those things I could save for later, like vacations or hobbies or sleep. Sarah's love life wasn't much better. Despite being wildly successful, her restaurant was written up in food blogs and travel magazines. Her relationships always fizzled out. Too intense, one ex said. Too busy, said another. She laughed it off online, posting memes about being married to her job and wine. Every now and then, our old pact would come up in conversation. Only 5 years left. She'd message me with a winking emoji. "You better be practicing your vows." I'd reply, "I never really thought she remembered it." Not really. Then 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, I got a FedEx package. No return address. Inside was a Ziploc bag with something rigid inside. When I opened it, I nearly dropped it. The napkin. Faded ink, pizza stains still visible, but laminated now like some ancient scroll. Taped to it was a simple note in her handwriting. Remember this? I'm still single. If you are too, meet me at the high school bleachers on your birthday. PM. Bring an appetite. I stared at the note for a long time. Sarah had always been unpredictable, but this was bold, even for her. Still, when my birthday rolled around, I found myself driving back to our hometown. I hadn't been there in years. My GPS still remembered the high school's address. I parked near the back lot, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt since medical school. It was exactly 7 p.m. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the bleachers behind the gym, our old hangout spot. And there she was, same curly, red hair, now pulled into a messy bun. Same denim jacket she used to steal from her brother. She looked up and grinned when she saw me. Took you long enough, she said, holding up 2 pizza boxes. From Mario's? I asked, already laughing. Of course, she said. Some traditions are sacred. We sat on the metal bleachers eating greasy pizza and watching the sky fade into dusk. It felt surreal, like I had stepped back into a memory that had been waiting for me to return. I'm not actually proposing, she said after a while, nudging my elbow. But I did move back. My restaurant chain's expanding, and I bought that old diner on Oak Street. You remember it? The one with the jukebox that only played 80s music? Still does. She grinned. I figured, maybe it's time I stop running and start building something. I nodded. I know the feeling. She glanced at me. So, you're still single? Painfully. We laughed again, but there was a weight behind the laughter, now shared history, mutual exhaustion, unspoken questions. That night, we didn't make any more promises. No dramatic declarations, just pizza and stories and an old friendship catching fire again. 2 months later, we went on our first real date. No pizza this time. She cooked, of course. It was the best risotto I've ever had. 6 months after that, I was helping her repaint the walls of the diner and learning how to install booth lighting on YouTube. By the time our 41st birthdays rolled around, we were living together in a small house just outside of town. The fridge was covered in post-it notes and terrible doodles. My scrubs hung beside her chef coats on the laundry line. We weren't living out some teenage fantasy, we were building something real. Something patient and worn and earned. Last week, we got married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends, a few family members, and a chocolate cake so rich it should have come with a warning label. During her vows, Sarah reached into her pocket, pulled out a weathered piece of laminated paper, and held it up. I know we're a year late, she said, voice cracking, but some promises are worth keeping. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Sometimes people ask if we really got married because of a teenage pact. I tell them no, that was just the spark. We got married because when life circled us back to each other, we were ready, finally ready for the kind of love that shows up late but stays for good. And yeah, we still order from Mario's every Friday. Only now, we sign our pizza napkins with wedding rings on our fingers. Story to surprise. You're covering my $48,000 venue as a wedding gift, my sister said at Christmas dinner later. I accidentally overheard my dad whisper, do not worry, we'll make your brother pay. I just whispered, copy that, opened my laptop and pulled my full transaction history. 48 gifts, 3 loan repayments, 8 dinners, all paid by me. I sent her an invoice titled, congratulations. Her fiancé called a week later. Is this real? On Monday, the venue tagged canceled. On Thursday, they got a black envelope. It was supposed to be just a dinner, just ham, wine, lights, and the usual family tension under garland. The kind that makes your jaw clench while you pass the mashed potatoes. What I didn't expect was a financial ambush and wrapping paper. My sister, glowing like a Pinterest board with too much exposure, stood up after the 3rd toast and clinked her glass. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, she said, already crying. And especially my brother. She turned to me. Dramatic pause for covering the venue. 48, oh, the best wedding gift ever. I laughed out loud. I thought it was a joke. I genuinely believed I was part of a new family bit. The annual holiday roast, now with PowerPoint. Except no one else laughed. They were all smiling like they'd rehearsed it. My mom dabbed her eyes. My uncle nodded sagely, like I just paid off his student loans too. Excuse me, I said, still holding a fork full of dry turkey. My sister grinned. You said you wanted to do something meaningful. And this is, monumental. Her fiancé raised his glass to generosity. I stared at the table. The linen was monogrammed, not initials, full names, gold thread. The menu cards had a bronze foil frame. The place cards were mini LED screen scrolling thank you messages, and next to mine a tiny white badge that read +1 finance department. Later that night, as I put on my coat, I heard my dad whisper behind the kitchen door, "Do not worry. We'll make your brother pay." I stood in the hallway for a full minute, staring at the reef like it had answers. Then I whispered back, "Copy that." Went home, opened my laptop, pulled up 3 years of transaction history like it was a confession, 48 gifts, 3 loan repayments, 8 family dinners, all paid by me. I renamed the spreadsheet, "Congratulations," attached it to an invoice, sent it to her personal email. The subject line read, "Here comes the bill." I wasn't generous. I was the fallback plan. That's the part no one likes to say out loud, that I wasn't helping out of love. I was helping because I was scared of what would happen if I didn't. Scared of the mess they'd make. Scared of the phone calls. Scared of Katie calling me crying at 11:43 p.m. because they just don't understand. She always started her calls like that. They just don't understand. And I'd already be logging into my bank app. It started small. Rent $1,200 per month in LA because you don't know how competitive it is here. She said it like she was on the edge of winning a Pulitzer for Instagram captions. Her apartment had a ring light mounted above the stove and a balcony with a better view than my office. I paid quietly like it was part of some subscription I'd forgotten to cancel. She thought mom and dad were helping. That was the funny part. She once posted a selfie in front of a new standing desk and tagged mom, "Thanks for always supporting me." I didn't say anything, just like the post, and transferred another $1,200. Then came tuition, $6,042 per semester, and it wasn't even for anything useful. It was for film school. Documentary focus, she said, as if that explained the sudden spike in my credit card bill from when she bought a $900 camera stabilizer and wrote it off as educational expense. I paid for groceries. I paid for her car, a 2009 Honda Civic that smelled like expired perfume and desperation, for $1,800. Beige, still alive, still ungrateful. And the parents, they were sneakier. They never asked directly. They just built scaffolding around the ask. Mom, the roof's still leaking. Dad, we're fine. Just had to cancel cable and put off the dentist again. Translation, we need you. I wired $2,000 a month to a joint account for Essentials. Turns out Essentials included 2 streaming platforms, weekly DoorDash orders, and I'm not kidding, an imported candle subscription. They didn't even try to hide it. One day, I visited unannounced and saw a $280 silk throw blanket draped across a chair like a trophy. "It's therapeutic," Mom said. No one ever said thank you. Not once. Instead, I got lines like, "Well, you're single. You don't have kids. That's why it's easier for you." Easier for me because I didn't have a wedding registry and a sob story, but I did have numbers. I had a spreadsheet called Family Investments that I updated monthly. It wasn't a budget. It was a list of every transaction that kept them afloat. When Katie got engaged, I gave her $2,000 as a start. She cried, said I was the only solid person in her life. I believed her until Christmas. Until she stood up next to the tree and announced like it was a TED Talk that I was covering her wedding venue. 48,000. Such a meaningful gift. Everyone clapped. I stared at my glass of wine like it might explain things. Later that night, I heard Dad in the kitchen whisper, "Don't worry, we'll make your brother pay," and something in me just snapped. Quietly, like a light bulb giving out at midnight, I opened my laptop. I pulled the spreadsheet. 48 gifts, 3 loan repayments, 8 dinners, everything documented, every cent. I renamed the file Congratulations. I sent it to her fiancé, attached a PDF invoice. No message, just numbers. A week later, I got a call. "Is this real?" he asked. I said, "It's math." On Monday, the venue posted, "Event canceled," and on Thursday, they got a black envelope. No return address, no signature. Inside, one printed sentence. "You confused silence for consent and me for a fool." They didn't respond to the invoice right away. That was the first sign. No, what is this? No, are you serious? Not even a typo complaint, just silence. like they were regrouping. Like they'd been hit and were waiting for the bleeding to stop. I knew what was coming. Guilt, gaslight, group chat pity posts. I was ready for that. What I wasn't ready for was the Instagram post. 3 days after the invoice hit their inbox, Katie posted a black and white photo of her and her fiancé hugging on a hilltop. The caption, "Sometimes the people you count on the most are the ones who break you, but love is louder. We're moving forward no matter what." The comment section, a firestorm of heart emojis. "And you're so strong." And just like that, I was cast. Not as the brother who paid for her education, rent, car, therapy, dinners, and now a wedding venue. No, I was the villain with a spreadsheet. I scrolled. One comment from someone named at Jules Heartbeats. "Cut off toxic family. You don't owe them anything, especially if they try to control you with money." Katie liked it. That was the moment I went quiet. Not out of shock, out of calculation. That weekend, the venue tagged canceled on their event calendar. No announcement, no explanation, just that one word. Monday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk urgently. It's about the deposit." It was from her fiancé. I ignored it. Then Tuesday, I got a call from the venue itself. Apparently, they hadn't just assumed I'd pay. They'd actually submitted my credit card information, without consent, without authorization, without a single conversation. Katie used my card information without authorization. They'd already processed the deposit weeks ago. That's when the ground shifted. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a full minute. Then I opened the bank app. $8,700. Already paid, already gone. No one had even told me. They were going to let me find out after the wedding. The second text from the fiancé came 2 hours later. "Please don't press charges." She panicked. "We didn't think it would process." She was going to tell you that line. She was going to tell you. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Then I replied with one line. "Forward this to your lawyer." That night I called the bank and flagged the charge. Then I called a friend, a lawyer, and told him everything. He didn't even let me finish before saying, "I'll handle it." But it didn't end there. Wednesday, my phone pinged. A new calendar invite. Title, "Family Dinner. Reconnect." Sent by mom. RSVP requested. I didn't respond, but I did show up. I wanted to see their faces. I walked in exactly at 7:00 p.m. They were all already seated. Mom, dad, Katie, the fiancé. Table set. Chicken, wine, flickering candles like it was a peace treaty in a Pottery Barn catalog. No one stood up. No one smiled. Katie just said, "We need to talk about the way you're acting. Not what we did, not what we stole, but my behavior." I sat down. Didn't touch the food. Mom started first. "This has gone too far." Dad added, "We're family, Katie." She stared me down, like I was a threat to national security. "I made a mistake," she said. "But so did you." Then she pulled out something. A printed contract. A fake one. An agreement that said I'd agreed to pay the full venue cost. Signed by me. Except I never signed anything. Not in person, not over email, not even verbally. I picked up the paper, stared at it, then smiled. Because the signature wasn't mine. It was the old version of my signature. The one I stopped using 3 years ago when I changed banks after a phishing attack. She'd copied it from a birthday check. And that's when it hit me. She'd done this before. I stared at the fake contract. She had printed it on thick paper, that soft, creamy kind people use for weddings or delusions. My name was right there beneath the promise to joyfully contribute to the marital union of Catherine and Dean. Joyfully. Except the signature wasn't mine. Not the one I'd used in years. "Where did you get this?" I asked, not looking up. Katie blinked. "You signed it." "No," I said. "I didn't. That's my signature from before I closed my Chase account." 2019. Silence. Mom put down her fork like it weighed something. Dad shifted in his chair. Dean cleared his throat. "She just thought she forged it," I said, "and submitted a stolen credit card to a venue under my name." "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a serious legal matter." Katie stood up. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You committed unauthorized financial use over Duck." I said, "Forgive me if I'm not clapping." Her face twisted like she couldn't decide whether to cry or perform for an imaginary camera. Then Mom chimed in. "Let's just talk this through as a family." I turned to her. "You knew." She flinched. I can tell. You all did. That's why you didn't react when she announced it at Christmas. That's why no one blinked. You'd planned it. Dad's mouth opened, closed. Katie reached for the contract. I didn't let go. No, I said. You want me involved? Here I am. Then I pulled my bag up from the floor and took out a folder. Not just any folder. The one labeled Family Debt Recovery Initiative. I laid out pages, copies of every wire transfer, every tuition payment, Venmo screenshots, bank statements, Zelle receipts, even the photo she posted kissing the Honda Civic. Then the envelope, black, unmarked. I slid it across the table to Dean. What's this? He asked. Your reality, I said. Inside was a breakdown. Not just of the stolen $8,700 of everything. Total balance due $134,248.31. No interest, no fees, just facts. Katie snatched it from his hands. This is insane. No, I said. Insane is trying to stage a wedding with stolen money and calling it love. She was shaking now, not from fear, from exposure. Mom tried again. We can fix this. You already did. I said. You fixed it around me. You sat down as a group and decided my bank account was the venue. And you toasted to that. I stood. Dean looked pale. He opened his mouth like he might apologize. Don't. I said. You're not the problem. You're just the intern who followed orders. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I left the contract on the table, picked up my folder, buttoned my coat, and right before I walked out, I said, You wanted me out of the wedding? Consider it done. Now try planning it without serious legal matter charges. As I reached the door, Katie called after me. You're doing this for control. I turned back once. No, I'm doing this because you all thought I wouldn't. Then I walked out down the stairs into the night. My phone buzzed before I reached the car. A new email. Subject line regarding venue cancellation and refund policy. I smiled, closed the phone, and let them sit in it. Let them all sit in the silence they thought I'd never use. It took them 4 days to realize I wasn't bluffing. The first email came from Mom. Subject, let's talk. Nobody text. Just the subject line and a read receipt. The second was from Katie. I overreacted. We all did. Let's reset. And the third, the most honest, came from Dean. It said, How bad is this legally? That one I answered. I replied with a copy of California's Penal Code for credit card unauthorized financial use and a screenshot of the flag venue charge. No greeting, no sign off. Then I went quiet again because I'd realized something. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing access to me. So I started cutting access. First the bank. I shut down the joint emergency account I'd been funding since 2020. No warning. Just gone. Within 2 hours, I got a text from Dad. Card declined at pharmacy. Everything. Okay. I didn't answer. Then I made 3 phone calls. One to Katie's college revoking the recurring tuition payment I'd still been covering for her second postgrad certificate program. One to the insurance company pulling myself as the responsible party on Mom's dental plan. And one to Lorenzo's DMV registration, turning the vehicle back in my name. I was nuclear, but I wasn't noisy. They thought I'd scream. Instead, I filed. Then I planned an event. Not a dinner, not a party, not a confrontation, a picnic. I sent out invites to the whole family, even the cousins I hadn't seen in years, the ones who usually only showed up to weddings and funerals. Subject line, spring renewal, let's reconnect. Location, a quiet park near the lake. Free food, live music, casual dress. The bait was obvious. They still came. I rented 4 folding tables and labeled them. Budgeting basics, resume review, job openings by zip code, how to apply for a loan. Legally, I printed packets, binders, brought snacks, even made little take-home folders with people's names. Katie arrived last wearing sunglasses and a frown. She walked straight up to me and hissed, What tea is this? I handed her a folder with her name. Inside a copy of her forged contract, the formal complaint draft, and an application for a grant for small business owners. She flipped through it, like it might self-destruct. You're insane, she whispered. No, I said. I'm done. Then Dean approached, holding his own folder. His had a resume template and a note at the bottom. Your wedding was never the plan, just the symptom. He sat down at the job openings table and didn't say a word. Katie stormed off after 15 minutes. Dean stayed. He filled out a job interest form. Under previous experience, he wrote, barista, freelance videography, crisis management, pending. I watched from a distance. Mom didn't come, but she sent a message through Aunt Rhonda. This is humiliating. Why are you doing this? I didn't respond. I handed Rhonda her folder. Inside, a breakdown of the $2,700 I'd loaned her son after his failed crypto stunt, just until Dogecoin bounces back. He'd said it didn't. Then came the twist. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. It was someone from the bank's fraud department. Apparently, this wasn't the first unauthorized charge using my card. There had been others, smaller, spread out, hidden in event deposits, catering prepays, miscellaneous charges across 3 states. Total 13, for 9-0. I felt my pulse slow, not spike. That kind of anger doesn't burn. It freezes. I asked for timestamps, locations, names on the invoices. One name came up I hadn't expected. Mom. Turns out she booked a surprise honeymoon for Katie and Dean 6 months ago. A resort in the Maldives. Paid in 4 separate transactions, all with my backup card on file. The one she had just in case. That's when the scale of it hit me. They weren't just using me. They had turned me into a silent co-signer on a life I wasn't living. Worse, they genuinely believed it was fine. I called the resort, canceled the booking, had them send a refund confirmation to me, not her. Then I filed the official police report, filed it with dates, receipts, emails, texts, signatures, every pixel of their betrayal and legal format. And I added one final detail, that the crime wasn't just fraud. It was use of personal data without consent. Because somewhere along the way, they hadn't just stolen my money. They'd stolen the version of me who said yes without blinking. That guy was gone. I emailed Katie the report. Subject line: in case you need it for your next documentary. No response until 2 days later when Dean called me. He left her. Said he didn't sign up for this. Said he thought it was just a misunderstanding. Said he was moving back to Chicago. I asked him why he told me. He said, because I realized I don't know who she is anymore, but I know exactly who you are, and for the first time I didn't feel flattered. I felt clean. 3 weeks passed. No texts, no voicemails, just silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the passive-aggressive kind. The kind you earn. The kind you deliver with discipline. I didn't check Instagram. I didn't call mutual friends. I didn't Google their updates. I just paused. They wanted life without me. Perfect. I gave them silence, not out of punitive pride, but out of relief. Freedom tastes quieter than revenge. Katie, she tried the soft approach first. A 6-paragraph email filled with storm metaphors and growth talk. I'm sorry for all of this. If we could just erase it, start new. I miss you. You always showed up for me. I didn't reply. That version of me, always showing up, emotionally bankrupt, died with the invoice. He didn't deserve a resurrection. Her next move, a selfie, no ring. Captioned, healing is messy, but so is rebirth. For her, it's redemption. For me, it's the cleanup. Last I heard, she posted a GoFundMe for emotional support resources. I assume she's trying to rebuild a narrative, but one cannot heal shift without accountability, and I didn't give her that. She's rebuilding. But on whose dime? Dean, he left. Probably not because of me, but because he woke up. A postcard arrived. 2 days after the picnic folders were torn down. Side A blank. Side B. Thanks for showing me what quiet strength looks like. No apology, no excuses, just clarity and distance. That may be the best acknowledgement I got. Better than an apology. Because you don't apologize to the person who gave up toxic enabling. You acknowledge, then walk away. He left room for grace. Not my forgiveness. Just peace. Mom played the diplomat. Called my office pretending to be Jane from accounting. Message: tell him family is forever. My receptionist replied, that number is no longer in service for unpaid clients. I didn't hear from her again. I suspect she realized, maybe too late, that I'm not a safety net anymore. Dad never reached out. Not directly, but mutual friends told me he's back in church, convinced betrayal looks bad on the soul. Sleepless nights, restless guilt. Maybe that's his confession ritual now. Not that it undoes his participation, but maybe it starts something. The Honda Lorenzo, that beige 2009 Civic, the vessel of unspoken expectations, was abandoned at Katie's apartment complex. No renewed registration, no insurance. I sold it for $1,200 cash. My price for reclaiming autonomy. The picnic tables set up with good intentions, not spite. Still standing. Last I heard. One handwritten note stuck to a table leg. Thank you. No signature. No context. Maybe a stranger who found a career tip relevant. Maybe Dean. Maybe someone still waking up to their own life. Even a small ripple matters. The legal score. The final number stands at 134,248.31. Stolen money, unauthorized charges, invalid signature, emotional bandwidth wasted. The financial compliance officer, his name is Felix, smiled when he heard I documented it all. They really thought you'd eat this. I didn't. And they're under official review now. Pending legal review. My next move. I send a final group email. Subject: you said it's better without me. Prove it. Body blank. Just the invoice attached again. One line at the bottom. You thought I was a wallet with feelings. Now you have both. Then I archive the thread because a quiet exit is louder than an epic speech. Because absence speaks when words are exhausted. Final state. Me financially. My bank account still exists. Rebounded from cancellation and court flags. Emergency fund. Restored. Emotionally, for the first time in years, I breathe without scanning for debt reminders or emotional hostage notes. Mentally, I'm planning a solo trip next month, somewhere without cellar vice. Maybe the Rockies, maybe Mexico, just space. Final reflection: this was never about money. It was always about boundaries. I kept score, not to punish, but to protect myself. They counted on me. They counted me out. I counted with me. I'm standing outside a coffee shop, half-mile from home, watching the steam curl above my latte. The Civic zips past, someone else driving it, maybe a stranger, maybe my old version of myself, but inside me, peace, empty, quiet, and vast. Because I walked away on my own terms. And sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing.